So we're live. Welcome to the programme, Jim. How's things?
Yeah, brilliant. Can't complain about anything.
Yeah. Last week we saw Town put in a good performance against Man United. I mean, they still ended up losing, but how did you get to see the game?
I did, yeah. I mean, obviously, getting knocked out of the FA Cup, it's not something that I'm going to say was a positive thing, but it lets us focus on the league, and we put in a good performance. I think that was the key thing. A lot of positives to take from that. I think if we play like that for the next, 12, 13 games or whatever it is, we should be okay.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a good performance. Somebody who's maybe come in for a bit of criticism from the Town fans recently is Phil Billing for some of his performances, but I thought he played quite well in that game as well. Is that?
Yeah, to be fair, I think, an Aaron Moy-shaped hole is a difficult hole to fill, and he stepped up. I mean, he does it sometimes when it's live and it's against Man City or Man United, but let's see if he can do it against Swansea or Palace or West Brom. That's the key test for him.
Yeah, I mean, there's some that are talking about, he could possibly go to a bigger club. There were clubs looking at him in the summer. What is your assessment of him in general? Is it that he's somebody who maybe does fade in the lesser games, if you like?
I think last summer it was reported that West Brom and Tottenham were maybe sniffing around 10 million was quoted. I'm not sure how true that was. But I think he's an all-round midfielder. He's technically gifted. He's got great passing range. He's got a hell of a shot on him. And, he can balance the defensive and offensive side of things. But, like you say, it's the application. Can he do it consistently? So far, he's not done it consistently. But if he does find that level of form, then, yeah, definitely probably will move on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, and I mean, at 21 years old, he's got plenty of time to develop as well.
Yeah, it seems like he's been around forever, to be honest. He's been here since, 16? Was it Esbjerg he came from? So I remember going to watch under 18, under 21 games, and he always stood out, all right, because he's really tall, so he's going to stand out. But also just, head and shoulders above everyone else on the pitch, and he's fitted perfectly into the first team, not just in the Championship, but in the Premier League. So we'll just see what happens, like if he applies himself, definitely.
Yeah. Now, you've joined us to talk about Stand Up from the Town. Can you tell us a little bit about that organisation for those people that might not know?
Yeah, so Stand Up for Town is an organisation that aims to bring rail seating, an area of safe standing to the John Smith Stadium, hopefully in the South Stand. So it's a combination between the Cowshed Loyal, which is the ultra atmosphere group, and Huddersfield Town Supporters Association, of which I'm the secretary. We formed in about April, I think, and we've done a lot of stuff since then. So we've canvassed supporter opinion with the Football Supporters Federation. We had a poll that we ran for a month. We got over 1,000 respondents. 96% of people, including a plurality of people who stand or sit at games, were in favour of safe standing in general and specifically at Town's ground. We've got pretty much everybody on board, from all the zines, the Southern Terriers, all the kind of foreign fan groups that have popped up. And now we're just waiting on the club, really, to come out and clarify their position.
Yeah. So is it something that you've been able to engage with the club on directly?
So we've definitely had some dialogue through something called the ATT panel, which is a structured dialogue forum. The club, I think, are supportive in principle, which is a very vague thing to say. I mean, it wins your plaudits, right? But practically, what supporters need now, because we've seen whether it's HJSA and the Cowshed Loyal, whether it's Spirit of Shankly, the Liverpool Supporters Trust, held their own poll, 18,000 respondents, 88% in favour. Obviously, with the sensitivities around Hillsborough, that is quite an important, significant milestone. From Middlesbrough to every single trust or club, it's quite clear that supporters are overwhelmingly in favour of safe standing. And we've seen some developments at Shrewsbury, for instance, in League One, where they're going to have rail seating installed. So now is the time for clubs to grow a bit of a backbone and go to the Premier League and say, this is what we want. And then the Premier League can go to the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, who can then pressure the government, particularly the Home Office, to change the legislation, which is the 1989 Football Spectators Act. That's what we need now. Fans, including our group, have done everything we can do. We've proved everything that we said, that we set out to prove. Now, if clubs want to say we engage with our supporters or customers or whatever they want to call us, they've got to now take this up and actually do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the legislation that came in around standing areas in football grounds, and a lot of you've mentioned Hillsborough and Hazel, and there's kind of maybe a bad image in the public's mind that relates to safe standing. How do you go about as an organisation maybe tackling those perceptions with some of the studies that you've done?
Well, in terms of perceptions, I mean, they are perceptions, but they're also myths. So all the Hillsborough inquests, including the most recent ones, and the Taylor report itself, said that standing is not inherently unsafe. What caused that disaster and Hazel disaster was negligent capacity and crowd management, treating fans like criminals, penning them in, not investing in infrastructure, allowing stadiums to atrophy. The Taylor report itself was very radical. It talked about support representation on boards, on safety advisory groups. The one thing that clubs took was this £200 million taxpayer subsidy for all-seater stadiums that they all wanted. So, we know that also those things, negligent crowd management, treating fans like criminal, can lead to similar disasters in all-seater stadiums. So the Ellis Park disaster in Johannesburg, killed a lot of people as well. So it's nothing to do with standing or sitting, it's how crowds are managed. And rail seating is very different to the terraces of old. I mean, it's been used in Germany, in Holland, in the United States, at Celtic Park for a very long time. There's never been any incidents. It's perfectly safe. It's what fans want. So I can understand that there are sensitivities around Hillsborough, but they bear no relation to this debate in a real logical, practical sense.
Yeah. You mentioned Germany there. The German fans are notoriously good at organising themselves, coming together as groups and using group power to influence clubs. Do you think we're as far along with that in Britain in terms of football fan power?
No, we're miles behind for a lot of reasons. So one of the reasons is structural. If you look at what happens in Germany, they have something called the 50+1 rule, which means that 50% of all shares in a club plus one share must be owned by supporters or supporters groups, with exemptions like Leipzig and Leverkusen, etc. So fans do have a real meaningful say over these things. But I think the other thing, the problem with English fans is, and this is maybe a controversial opinion, is English fans love complaining about things, but they're not going to do anything about it. So if you want meaningful change, you've got to come and join a group like HSA or the Cowshed Loyal, or lend your support to Stand Up for Town, because nothing gets changed if those people who want the change are going to do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's that as well. I think it's some of my best days in football grounds. I remember going to Stockport away as a kid, and that was behind the goal, standing, going with my dad. The atmosphere is brilliant, and it evokes something of old football grounds, if you like, and that old football atmosphere. Do you think that there's ever going to be the same connection between boards in England and the fans, the same way that there is in maybe Germany, for instance? I mean, the amount of money that's going around now. I've seen videos of Liverpool fans talking about the dire state of the atmosphere at Anfield, Man United fans talking about it, and how the money that comes in from Premier League allows for tourist fans where they can charge what they want. The money from television rights is so vast that it's almost, they don't need the local fans, if you like. Is that a worry that Town? I mean, I would love Town to continue in the Premier League. I'm a huge Town fan, but is there a worry amongst Town fans that the longer we stay where that money is, that might become the case with Huddersfield as well, that the board could become less interested in the wants of fans?
Yeah, so there's kind of like three kind of issues that you've raised there. So the first one is atmosphere. And the three things that our campaign focuses on are choice. So if you want to sit, you should be able to sit. And if you want to stand, you should be able to stand. And that's the beauty of rail seating, is it's flexible. It can be a seat or it can be a standing area. And also particularly at away games, you've got a lot of elderly people who, when everybody decides to stand, they don't have a choice but to stand, and some of them have been put off games, etc. So this is not about saying we just want to stand, so we're going to do this. It's about affording choice to everybody, which I think is the mantra of whatever you want to call it, the modern global capitalism, isn't it? It's choice, 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 and we want to then take these people and clubs and boards and institutions who constantly carp on about choice to actually give us some. So that's the first thing. Safety is the other big thing. I don't want to go too much into that because there are sensitivities around things, but the safest way to stand is in a rail seating area. Yeah. It's not particularly safe to stand with seats like this. There's no continuous barriers, crushes, collapses, surges, etc. And the third point, which you raised, is atmosphere. Now, a really simple question about how standing affects atmospheres is, if the yellow wall at Dortmund were all sitting down, would that be a better or worse atmosphere? It'd be a worse atmosphere. And we've seen what happened at Celtic. The atmospheres, all right, when they were playing big clubs, that it was, or Champions League, the atmosphere was electric. But when you were beating Wraith Rovers 5-0, it was dead. Whereas the Lisbon Lions standing section, which they've got there, now they're beating Wraith Rovers 5-0 and everybody's bouncing around and singing because, those designated areas, it's like in America they call them party decks, right? It's awful, awful.
There's a lot that the Americans do with football, soccer that is... it's particular to America, let's put it that way.
It's a sort of taste in the mouth. But they've got a point, right? That's what it's about, encouraging that. It's about getting young people in there. And it's about actually having, cheaper ticket prices because there's a higher density that you can fit in there. So it's all about, I think atmosphere definitely would improve. Another thing in terms you mentioned, will English fans ever get the kind of power over their clubs and governing bodies that German fans have right now? Probably not. And so ownership, although there are some really good examples at Wimbledon or at Chester or at FC United Manchester, or actually in the Premier League at Swansea, where Swansea City Supporters Trust own 25% of the shares in the club. It's doable, but it's not a model that fits everyone. I think the key thing to push for is representation. Representation on the FA Council, representation on the Premier League, the Football League, and representation on club boards. Again, that might be a controversial thing to say, but that, fans can't be ignored then. And the reason that you have, across the board, high ticket prices, you have, at Anfield, 25% of this stadium is filled with, tourists, is because fans don't have a redress or a mechanism to make their voice heard. So that's one thing. In terms of the specific context of Huddersfield Town, I think we're very lucky that we've got someone like Dean Hoyle who, went from the terraces to the boardroom. I don't think he'll let something like that happen. I also think, the top 5 clubs, they are multinational corporations. They've got different problems and on a different scale. Yeah. I don't think we'll ever see half the Kilner Bank filled with Scandinavian tourists or something. And I think we're in a good position there where when we do get new fans and foreign fans, we can actually welcome and embrace them, and it won't cause or shouldn't cause any tension.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen since David Wagner came in, there's been a real, almost refocusing towards the fans. The ticket prices have come down. There's been a lot of engagement from players with the fans as well. Is that something that's been welcomed by the Supporters Association? Yeah,
massively, and I think particularly the Cowshed Loyal, who deserve a lot of credit for what they've done to the atmosphere. And I don't think it's any coincidence that when Wagner came in, that's when the Cowshed Loyal or NSL project really took off. And again, that's a German kind of model, isn't it? Yeah. Which sounds strange, just having interaction with your fans, but it does make us quite unique or unusual in terms of the rest of the league. And I think we've got a lot of characters in the dressing room, like your Zankas, your Heffelers, who go out of the way to interact with fans. And I think that should be the norm at every club. I mean, it makes sense, right? We pay our money, it's a community sport, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can totally agree with the atmosphere as well. I think every opportunity I get to go in the South Stand, I go in the South Stand. I think since they've designated that area for fans, it's transformed that stadium. I remember going as a teenager and the football didn't help, granted, but it felt dead at times, and it was quite dispiriting as a town fan to go and see such a big stadium so quiet. And I love it now. I love that the lads at the front with the megaphone and bouncing and everybody's singing, and as soon as it goes quiet, somebody else starts singing. I think it's just fantastic. How do people go about finding out more about the Supporters Association? Do you have an online presence?
So we've got a Twitter account, which is @officialHTSA. We're on Facebook, just type it in and search for us. We've also got a website, htsa-web.com. And, you know, feel free to get in contact with us. We've got his email addresses all on there, and we're happy for you to phone us, ring us, whatever. And if you have any issues, whether it's stewarding or disability access or banning orders or anything like that you feel, you know, you've been hard done by or something needs to change, you know, that's what we're there for. And we do some other stuff. You know, we run a food bank collection point on game days, which we'd encourage people to donate to, at our little cabin by the south stand. We're running campaigns to get more women and girls to attend matches. We're working with destitute asylum seekers of Huddersfield to kind of highlight some of the issues that are going on. So, yeah, definitely go on the website, Twitter, just get in touch with us. That's what we're there for. So,
yeah. And before we finish, obviously this weekend Town face West Brom. Going into the game after the game at Bournemouth, decent win. What are you thinking for the weekend? Does it feel like a game we can get something out of?
Yeah, I think if we set up with the high intensity that we had against Man United and Bournemouth, really try and take the game to West Brom, who were pretty shaky, Pulis insists on playing two up front, you know, we can flood the midfield. I think we can win that 1-2-0 at least.
So long as they don't park the taxi.
So long as we don't park the bus. I mean, yeah, we've got to be brave. Like, that's what we've seen is playing the opposition, particularly lower opposition, hasn't worked. So play our game and hopefully it should come off.
Yeah, brilliant. Jim, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, brilliant. So that's all we've got time for. Thank you guys for joining us for this first From the Cowshed discussion programme. That's all we've got time for. I'm Kyle Warwick. Goodbye.